we're going there. I got to remember what date it is because I never get this right too. All right, guys, ready? You ready online? All right, today is Wednesday, June 21st, 2023, and this is my little Bible study, and we're continuing with the study in the book of Genesis. Last week, okay, where we were last week, we had Isaac, right? They had two sons. They had one son Isaac really loved. His name was Esau. And then the other son, Rachel really loved. Or Rebecca, excuse me. We're getting to Rachel tonight, maybe. Rachel really loved.
Rebecca.
Yeah, why do I keep saying that?
It's okay.
The one that Isaac married, that woman.
That
All right. Well, while they were in the womb, right, they had a struggle with each other. They were fighting the entire time until they were in utero. And the angel of the Lord tells her flat out, hey, you got two nations in your womb, and they're going to struggle till the end of time. That's really what it was about. That's really what she told them. All right. So they go on, they're born, right? They grow up, they're men. Esau's a hunter, right? He's a worldly man. He's a hunter, a man in the field. But Jacob, it calls him, what do you call it, pleasant? But it really means like honorable or holy. But he's a different person. Esau's hairy and big, and Jacob's a slender guy, and kind of smaller. Red. Yeah, his the maiden name's Edom. That he uses, it means the red nation, and it's the one that we call Russia today. All right. So Jacob has a brother, and that's the one that struggled. Well, Jacob now is the line of lineage we're focused on pretty much tonight. We're going to get back to it. Now, Esau goes out hunting, or well, he comes back hungry, right? And he trades his birthright with his brother just for a bowl of soup. All right. And if you really look around when they talk about the Russian people, they're always looking for food. They're hungry. They don't have enough, right? Great people, but they just don't have enough because of where they live. That's part of this blessing that's doled out right here. All right. Now, Jacob, on the other hand, you have to need two things. You have the birthright, which you trade to pursue, but then you get the blessing. Well, it's his mother who's the one, the little slick one. Remember, I always said, I want to work with this girl because she works hard and she's smart. She thinks real fast. All right, well, when she hears about Esau going out to hunt and when he's coming back, well, she puts a plan together right quick. Let's just sneak Jacob in there and get him blessed. Isaac won't know, he can't see anything anyway.
Put furs on him.
Right, put fur on him. He was worried. And she said, don't worry about it, I got this. Well, he was going to get venison. Don't worry about it, I've been cooking for this man for how many years by then? All right, so she got it covered. So she's thinking on her feet and moving. Then when push comes to shove, she gets the blessing. All right, Isaac gets the blessing in the end. Now, that was foretold from their birth, right? It said that even when it said that you have two nations in here, but the younger is going to serve, the elder is going to serve the younger. And that was exactly how it ended up. All according to God's plan as we went. All right, now that brings us up right here where we are, chapter 28. Now, let's just say that Esau probably feels jolted. All right, let's try to look at it from his standpoint for just a minute. From his standpoint, he got tricked out of his birthright, out of the blessing, and then considers his trade to be just kind of a baloney trade. All right, so he feels a little bit jilted nonetheless. And remember when he first talked about this, he said, well, I'm just going to kill Jacob. When Isaac dies, I'll just kill him because it'll make me feel better. All right, and that's when this happened right here where his mama, since I can't say her name, Rebecca, all right, says, you go run off to your grandpa's house and hide because your brother wants to kill you. And I can't think, when I read this, every time I can't think of how natural that is. In my life, I've heard this more than once. Somebody get in trouble, the first place they run is grandma and grandpa's. Run home, run mom and dad's. All right, and you're going to find out there ain't nothing changed from the beginning of time. All right, listen to what it says. 28 verse 1. And Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and charged him and said unto him, thou shalt not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan. Now, if you remember, this is exactly what Abraham was worried about happening with Isaac. That was the big thing he was worried about. He sent his servant all the way back to his home to find him a wife out of his own people. All right? And here you find Isaac worried about the same thing with Jacob. 2. Arise, go to Pandamaram to the house of Bethuel, thy mother's father. So that's his grandpa's house. All right, and take thee a wife from thence of the daughters of Laban, thy mother's brother. Right, now we've already had a pretty good little introduction to Laban. Right, when he first shows up there, he didn't have anything to do with anybody until there was a lot of gold involved. And as soon as Rebecca started getting some cash, Laban was really, really interested. Now, maybe that says something bad about Laban, maybe it doesn't. Maybe he's just a guy just trying to make a living, just like a lot of other people, and sees an opportunity. He doesn't want to pass up. I don't know. You work it out in your own mind. It doesn't really matter. But it is interesting, though, that Laban is always kind of focused on cash. Now, nonetheless, he finally back here home. Verse 3, and God Almighty bless thee and make thee fruitful and multiply thee, that thou mayest be a multitude of people. Verse 4, and give thee a blessing of Abraham and give thee the blessing of Abraham to thee, to thy seed with thee, that thou mayest inherit the land wherein thou art a stranger, which God hath given to Abraham. And Isaac sent away Jacob, and he went to Paddan-aram unto Laban, son of Bethuel the Syrian. The brother of Rebekah, Jacob and Esau's mother. So he goes to grandpa's house. Now, just because he's called a Syrian, we went over this a couple of weeks ago, just because he's called a Syrian, that's Syrian by geographical location. Remember, his lineage comes from Abraham's brother. That was the whole point of Abraham sending Elazar all the way back to find a wife for his son, was to go back to his people. Now, they are called Syrian because they're living in this land of Syria, is why they're referred to as Syrian, but they're actually out of the Adamic lineage that we've been studying all the way from the beginning of the book of Genesis. All right? If you don't quite understand what that means, well, it's all online. It's all on YouTube. Just the first 2 lessons goes in order all the way up to tonight. All right? So, but it's a little while. It'll take you a little while to get through it all. All right, but nonetheless, here we go. They got them all. They're headed all back. Still worried about that same genealogy that Abraham was with Isaac. Well, Isaac's worried about it with Jacob now. All right. Now listen to what Esau says. When Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him away to Paddan-aram to take a wife from thence, and that as he blessed him, he gave him charge, saying, thou shalt not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan. And Jacob obeyed his father and his mother and was gone to Paddan-aram, went to Syria. All right? And Esau, talk about a rebellious child, and Esau, seeing that the daughters of Canaan pleased not Isaac's father, then went Esau unto Ishmael. Now remember who Ishmael is, right? It's Abraham's first son. Okay, so here we have a little thing going on. You got Esau, who feels jilted over the blessing and over the birthright, goes off when he finds out that Isaac doesn't want Jacob or him even marrying a Canaanite or anybody other than out of his people. First thing he does is gets to thinking, well, I'm going to run off to the first son who feels pretty jilted too. All right? Equal ground. So yeah, it's like the prodigal son visiting the prodigal son. So you got Esau then hooking up with Ishmael. All right, remember, because Ishmael was promised a pretty big birthright on his own, right? 12 princes to himself, right? So he's a pretty big deal. So Esau is being smart and he's being tactical and he's hooking up with the other enemy to Abraham's seed line through Jacob. All right, and this is still how Esau's people and Esau himself function to this day if you watch the political arena. It's real snaky, it's real behind the back, and it's real old and it goes back a long, long way. All right. Matter of fact, it goes so far as to right now you currently see Esau's people, Russia, in peace negotiations with Ishmael's people, Saudi Arabia, in current events in the Middle East right now. All right, so anybody that thinks all this stuff has went somewhere and went away, well, no, all these things that happened were all what? Remember, we started way back in the day when we started the book of Revelations, or in samples for those that live in the last days, so that the things that occur won't confuse your mind. Right, because it repeats itself. And you're starting to really get that now. When you do it line by line, verse by verse, you see. It's just like watching Star Wars. We were talking about this the other day, how we're sick to death of the same story.
Same canon, yeah.
Same canon over and over and over, same people, blah, 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 blah. Well, this is kind of set up that way to drive those same things into your head. And we're getting ready to get into some of that here in just a second, all right? Because now we come to something that's really interesting. All right, well, Ishmael, let's finish that verse, verse 9. And when Esau went unto Ishmael and took unto the wives which he had, Mahlah, the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son, the sister of Nebajoth, to be his wife. So he runs over, hooks up with Ishmael's group. Now they have a blood relationship between Ishmael and between Esau. All right. Verse 10, and Jacob went out from Beersheba and went to Haran, and he lighted upon a certain place and tarried there all night, because the sun was set. And he took of the stones of that place and put them for a pillow, or for his pillow, and lay down in the place to sleep. All right, now, it's hard to prove this, all right? This is most likely the Temple Mount that we know of today, all right? And that rock that he's sleeping on is one that we've studied before out of the book of Revelation, when we're talking about where the Antichrist will stand, all right? Because he'll stand there in the side of the north and look at that spot, all right? And this is the same place that Jacob lays down, places his head, and has this dream when he puts this rock behind his head. This rock becomes really important, all right? Verse 12. And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up on earth, and the top of it reached to heaven, and behold, the angels of God ascending and descending out of it. All right? And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am Yahweh, God of Abraham thy father, and the God of Isaac, and the land wherein thou liest, to thee I will give it, and to thy seed. All right. I want you to picture this. He's laying there in a spot where the future of the Ark of the Covenant will rest inside of both temples. All right, and both Solomon's temple and the Herodian temple. All right. Now, in the Herodian temple, they don't have the Ark of the Covenant, but they have the place. All right. Now, he has his dream, and in his dream, he sees a ladder, and on this ladder, he has souls descending from heaven and then reascending, with God standing over it all, overseeing everything that's occurring on it. All right. What you see in this dream is the exact template for this heaven and earth age, for the second heaven and earth age. All right. You see, we leave that realm that we were born into, however long ago it actually was, all right, and begin dwelling in the flesh at conception. All right. That's the second heaven and earth age. That's the one that we live in now. All right, and that's really what he's being shown. He's being shown those events. That's exactly the thing. You want to back that up a little bit? John chapter 3, after 16, so somewhere after that, it tells you that there's not one person that has ascended, went back to God that didn't first come down from God. All right, and that's exactly what Jacob is seeing, that exact layout. All right, and that's just, I don't know why he sees it, but there you go. He's got it. And that's really what it is. All right, he's just seeing the layout for this entire age. All right, now this rock. Let's talk about this rock a minute. All right, because this rock, people know about this rock. All right, this is a rock that I said when we were studying Exodus, I said I don't have any proof, but I think it's this rock that he says that he struck the rock and he gave the water.
Yeah.
Well, it's this rock. It's one Jacob put in his head. Because he makes a pillar out of it and they take it with them when they get out, when they head out, and he keeps it with them. All right, so it's probably the same rock. Now, history tells you that this rock got moved around quite a bit. All right. Yes, the coronation stone that was in England.
Yeah.
There's never been a king or a queen of England that has not been coronated over the stone. Now, the interesting thing about that is that the first charge as king or queen of England is that you're keeper of the faith. That's the first charge, the same faith that we're studying right here. All right. So it's no been great leap that that King James comes out of that whole group that came up with this translation in the first place. So as part of that charge, that stone's very, very important. Well, it shows up prophetically. I can't remember exactly where, but it talks about how it's returned, overturned, and overturned one last time before the second advent. Well, last time it was overturned was just probably not 15, 20 years ago when it went back to Scotland, who had original claim to it. So it now sits there. It's why the queen that just died was there in Scotland instead of in Westminster Abbey. That's the home, all right? She was there because the coronation stone was transferred back to Scotland. And as soon as she dies, whether any of us knew it, the king was coronated at that time, at her death. That's why it says the king or the queen is dead, long live the king or the queen, because as soon as one dies, the next one steps in the line of the monarch. And it's been that way since the beginning. All right. So this stone still has some relevance to what we're talking about today. Now, that's a physical stone. Well, there's a spiritual side to this, all right? this stone becomes very important from a spiritual aspect. Let's go just a little bit farther and then we'll talk about that. All right, verse 14, he's talking about the promise to Abraham. And thy seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and shall be spread abroad to the west, and to the east, and to the north, and to the south. And in thee thy seed shall be, all the families of earth shall be blessed. All right, so that comes to fruition, of course, at Mount of Olives, at Calvary. All right, it's this very lineage that the Messiah himself was born in. All right, even whether it's through his adoptive father Joseph, or his birth mother, Mary. Yeah. All right? Either way, one was king's line, the other was the priest line, and you see in him the unification of both the priest line, and the king's line. Okay, so you follow the thought? Okay. And then, but you'll either be, in the third age, you'll either be in his name or you won't be alive in it. It's just kind of the way it breaks down. But the good news is there's a lot that happens between now and then. Just throw it up there like that. Verse 15, and behold, I am with thee, I will keep thee in all thy place, whither thou goest, and I will bring thee again into this land, for I will not leave thee until I have done all which I have spoken to thee of. And that goes on to this day, because it's still not finished. All right? And Jacob awaked out of his sleep, and he said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I knew it not. He's like, I didn't realize that God was actually here. And there's a big lesson in that, all right, when you get to thinking about it. Verse 17, and he was afraid and said, how dreadful is this place? This is none other but the house of God, and this is the gate of the heaven. Listen to dreadful, that's not a good translation. It does have dread involved in it, but it means, and it was awesome, but it scared me. It really is what he's trying to say.
So magnificent.
Yeah, it was scary, right? It wasn't that it was just fear. It was just like, it was so unexplainable. I didn't know that it actually took my breath away, and I didn't know how to answer. It's really what it means. But watch what it says in 17. And he was afraid and said, how dreadful is this place? This is none other but the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. And Jacob rose up early in the morning and took the stone that he had put for his pillow and set it for a pillar and poured oil upon it. He anointed the thing right there with olive oil. Okay? Now this is important. Listen to what it says now. And he called the name of the place Bethel, which means what? House of God. All right. So he's using the stone in a relationship to the house of God. All right? Bethel, the name of the city, which was called Luz at the first. So it's not the place, it's another place, and this is the city that's closest to it, is the name of it. And Jacob vowed a vow, saying, if God will be with me and will keep me in this way that I go, I will and will give me bread to eat and raiment to put on, so that I come again to my father's house in peace. Then shall the Lord be my God. And this stone, which I have set for a pillar, shall be God's house, and for all thou shalt give me, I will surely give the tenth unto thee. All right, so now here we see something else that's sitting set up. All right, so what do you say? This is his house. Okay, let's see. Flip over to Revelation. We're going to do 2s tonight. Revelation chapter 2. And let's go down. I got to see which church it is. Pergamos, so we're going to pick it up about 12. All right. This stone is spoken of in the book of Revelation. All right, and it's a cornerstone for the church. It's the stone that the builders rejected. Right? All right, so this stone is talked about a lot other than just those places that we're talking about. And one of those places is the church of Pergamos in the book of Revelation. Now, you got to remember the standpoint to which the letters are written to the churches in the first place. It is from the first day of the millennium, and it's looking back, and he said, see what you see, and I want you to pen a letter to each of these churches based on what you see. All right? And so that's where we're going to pick it up in 12. And listen to what it says. Now, so that's the important thing, is that you keep that perspective in mind. All right? You have to understand that he's looking back from the standpoint of these letters, looking at this church, telling them what they've done and what's went wrong and how it went wrong. That's the point of the letter, is to warn the church of Pergamos. All right, listen to what it says. And to the angel of the church of Pergamos write these things, saying, He which hath the sharp sword with the two edges. You find out later in the book of Revelation that it's Christ's tongue itself, and it cuts both ways, no matter which way he swings that bad bear. All right? Verse 13, I know thy works. Remember, he's looking back, saying what they've done. I know thy works, and where thou dwellest, even where Satan's seat is. We were just talking about that. At that point, he's standing in the temple claiming to be God, right? And thou holdest fast my name and has not denied my faith, even in those days when Antipas was my faithful martyr, who was slain among you where Satan dwelleth. So that's right there in the temple from the standpoint of this letter. Okay? Now, Antipas, the thing about it, remember, it means anti-father. All right? But this dude was a martyr. All right? So he might not have been a great guy. Who knows? But when push comes to shove, he was a martyr that died right there in the temple. All right? So there's a lot to be said about that. And he's referring to this church kind of in that way. Listen to what it says. Verse 14. But I have a few things against thee. All right? So it's just been pretty positive, the letter, up until right now. All right? Because thou hast them that hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed unto idols and commit fornication. Okay? Balaam and Balak, that's a good story. You want to talk about something cool. All right? Now, Balak, you got to remember, Balak hires Balaam to curse Israel. And he sends him up there 3 times, and Balak is so ticked by the last time, he's kind of cussing him out. He's like, you idiot, I've hired you to curse these people, and 3 times you've all out blessed them when you went up there. And Balaam's like, I can't do anything. All right? It's the God of the Hebrews that protects them and blesses them. There's nothing I can do. All right. So, he but his yoke. But he taught Balak how to cast a stumbling block before Israel. Now, everybody's heard this story, but they don't usually make the connection. Remember the dude named Phinehas who sees these people who are not of Israel, and these men are going out chasing these girls, and they're bringing them back into the camp? This one priest takes a staff and kills everybody that was involved. All right? Well, that's what he was talking about, what Balaam taught Balak. See, they couldn't curse Israel with a curse. It didn't work because God had the ultimate authority. Well, he could weaken them. He could send in people to have families with them. Then what were they supposed to do? Right, bring in their other gods, commit fornication, things sacrificing to idols. Right? That was the way that Balaam taught Balak to bring down Israel. All right, and eventually cost Balaam his life. All right, because when they invade, he's dead already. I don't know if they killed him. Somebody does, though. He's dead when they find him. All right. So there's a lot in that whole idea right there. Right? Now, the thing, what they say about Balaam, what was Balaam's doctrine, though? Balaam loved to prophesy for money. That was Balaam's gig. Right? He wanted to be with Balak because Balak 3 times sent men with more and more money every time. And all he had to do was go. And he did. And then you have the whole scene. But that was how Balaam taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before Israel. It had anything to do with religion at first. It was with a way, because in that time, you would have think political alliances were forged in the bedroom.
Families.
Yeah, families. That was what forged it. All right? And that was the thing that Balaam told Balak. Yeah. That's how you beat these people. Destroy their family, you beat Israel, right? Because you understand the story from Genesis. He protected that bloodline from way back, right? All right. But nonetheless, let's see what it says. Verse 15. So hast thou also them that hold the doctrine of Balaam, or the doctrines of the Nicolaitans, which I hate, which are just doctrines somewhat associated with Balaam, but with more opulence and more of everything. All right? Look what it says in 16. Repent, or else I will come unto thee quickly, and will fight against them with the sword of my mouth. Verse 17. He that hath to hear, let him hear. All right, he that hath to hear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. To him that overcometh will I give to eat of hidden manna. It's the same hidden manna that we're talking about in the book of Genesis. All right, the same manna that's available to everybody, but you don't get a lot of it in church sometimes. All right, let's say that hidden manna, right? And will give to him a white stone, and in that stone a new name written, which no man knoweth, save he that receiveth. All right. Now this is speaking of Christ. Okay, so all the way back to Jacob then again. The stone that he has right there, he says, I'm going to build a church on it. All right. Come all the way to the last book, which that was the first book, that white stone's still being spoken of in the form of Christ himself, where he actually still built a church from. All right, remember what he says. He's looking at those buildings and said, it's great, but tear it down and I'll build it back in 3 days, right? All right, so in 3 days he didn't know what he was talking about, but he did. He built the church on that rock. All right, 3 days in the grave and then resurrected. All right, so that's the very church that stone represents. Now, we got just a little bit more time, so there's one more place I said we're doing twos. All right, so let's go to Daniel now. Can't be in Revelation without talking about Daniel. So let's go to Daniel chapter 2. And this is one of my favorite sections in the entire Bible. Is this stuff with Nebuchadnezzar and Daniel. All right, it really is. Now, let's just talk about that a little bit then. All right, Daniel is an overlay to the book of Revelation. It gives you a lot of the information you need even before you study the book of Revelation. You get it from the book of Daniel. Yeah, chapter 2. And now, Nebuchadnezzar is the ultimate Antichrist type in the Bible. You can't read it for 20 minutes without running into a reference to Nebuchadnezzar or the Antichrist. All right? So he's the ultimate one, and we have the whole book of Daniel based around him. There's a lot that says about that. I mean, if he represents the Antichrist, you got to realize when he first, like chapter 1, when he shows up, right, he wants the best and the brightest of the house of Israel. He wants all the princes. He doesn't want the dumb, the slow ones. He said, I want the ones that are learning science and math. All right? I want to take them to Babylon. And the first thing he did was put them in school. All right? He wasn't killing people the ones went there. The first thing he did was educate them or start to educate them. All right? They didn't speak the language when they went there, but within a year, Daniel masters it. Because the book of Daniel switches from pure Hebrew to pure Chaldean right in the middle of the sentence. Just right in the middle of Daniel's speech. And then to the very end, it slips back into Hebrew again. All right, and that just to show you that Daniel and those boys that went in, they weren't in Babylon throwing a fit. All right, they were working. Right, they were in there working. All right. But there's a lot to that, and we'll cover that when we do Daniel a lot in very much detail. But, all right, here in chapter 2, though, we have Nebuchadnezzar's dream. I'm going to go down. We're not going to do the whole dream. God reveals Nebuchadnezzar's dream. We're going to pick it up in 17, but I'm going to set it up for you a little bit. Okay, Nebuchadnezzar has had this dream. And this dream is tearing this man apart. All right, now here's the catch. There's some things you need to know. One is, I think Nebuchadnezzar's setting this up. All right? I think he understands that his good little wise men of Babylon are manipulating him from behind the scenes. And this is a little scheme he cooks up to even the score. Now, that's just my opinion, kind of. So you'll see as we kind of go through. All right. Now, because this is the setup, okay? And this is why I say this, all right? Because the setup is this. Nebuchadnezzar's had a dream. The kick in the pants is he can't remember what it is. He doesn't know. He can't remember his dream. And this is bugging him for some reason. Now, Daniel's gone in the first part of this, and we're going to pick it up when Daniel shows back up. All right. So the king's like, he gathers all his magicians and the sorcerers together and says, all right, I had a dream. I need you to give an interpretation. And the Chaldeans stand up to the Babylonian priests. Well, king, just tell us the dream, and we'll give you the interpretation. Nebuchadnezzar's like, I can't remember. But you have to tell me the dream, and you have to tell me the interpretation. All right. Now you see why I think this is a setup. Nebuchadnezzar has really given them, we're dead. Yeah. That is the sentence, is death. That might as well be in just kill yourself now. It might as well, but he should have told them. All right. Now, why I think he cooks this up is it says that Nebuchadnezzar is one of God's servants, right? It says he's a true, no fault, right. He's a true servant. And Nebuchadnezzar writes one of the prettiest prayers that you will read in any book involved with the Bible, in chapter 4, I think. It's absolutely beautiful, where he's talking about all these things. So what I think is that he knows that God is not going to let Daniel die, because he's already seen that it's not going to happen. So I think he's kind of banking on that, and he's just using that to clean house, because it works, because that's exactly what happens. All right, now listen to this. Verse 17. Now Daniel's been away. Daniel comes back, and this is the first thing Daniel's confronted with on the trip. What was Daniel doing away? Probably Nebuchadnezzar's business. All right, because Daniel was good at everything that he did, and he was very blessed of God. So he, just like Joseph in Egypt, he was probably running stuff for Nebuchadnezzar by now. All right, but either way, Daniel's absent from the scene, and this picks up with he gets back. All right, verse 17. Daniel went to his house and made the thing known to Halama, Mishael, and Azura, his companions, at Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, I think. Verse 18. And they would desire mercies of God of heaven concerning this secret. All right, we're going to pray to God about this thing. All right, so what Daniel's confronted with this conundrum that everybody's going to get killed over, the first thing he thinks to do is pray. All right, now I think that's kind of an important twist to put in there. That's the first thing he comes up with, right? And Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. He doesn't want to die because Daniel and his bunch are part of that wise men. All right, they've been in school. 19. Then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Listen to what Daniel said. And Daniel answered and said, Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changeth the times and the seasons. He moveth kings and setteth up kings. He giveth wisdom unto the wise and knowledge to them that know understanding. He revealeth the deep and the secret thing. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth with him. These are all ideas and things that we've studied in the book of Genesis already. All right. Now, what was he saying? He set up king. Remember, he set up Nebuchadnezzar. He said, I brought Nebuchadnezzar into existence as a good servant for me to do the things that he did. All right. So he set Nebuchadnezzar up. He also tore Nebuchadnezzar down. All right. Listen to what he says. All right. He reveals deep and secret things. He knoweth that in the dark. Okay, we got that. 23. I thank thee and praise thee, O thou God of my fathers, who hast given me wisdom and might, and hast made known unto me now that we desire now what we desire of thee. For thou hast now made known unto us the king's matter. So you told us what the secret is. Right? Therefore Daniel went into Arioch, who the king had ordained to destroy the wise men of Babylon. So Daniel goes straight to the executioner. That's a gutsy move.
Oh,
yeah,
crazy.
That's just flat out. That's like Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego. What they told him about that is said, we're not even going to be quiet about this. If you make us work, you can just kill us now. Yeah, just be done with it. All right. And so Daniel, he kind of pulling out the same way. All right. And he went and said thus unto them, destroy not the wise men of Babylon, bring me before the king, and I will show unto the king the interpretation. So Daniel's like, don't sweat it, I got this. All right. And Arioch brought Daniel before the king in haste, hurried up, and said, thus unto him, I have found a man of the captives of Judea that will make known unto the king the interpretation. And the king answered and said, Daniel, whose name was Belshazzar, that one, that's Daniel's name in Babylonian. Belshazzar, that's how you say it. That's ours. Art thou able to make known unto me the dream which I have seen and the interpretation thereof? 27, and Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, the secret which the king hath demanded cannot the wise men and the astrologers and the magicians and the soothsayers say unto the king? He said, what, nobody in Babylon can do this? All right, Daniel, I told you Daniel's cocky. All right, 28. But there is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets. Now, is Daniel taking credit for this? No. There is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets and maketh known to King Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. It's like, ooh, wait a minute. This dream was not about anything to do with Daniel. It has to do with us. All right, that stone. All right. Thy dream and thy vision of thy head upon thy bed are this. Listen to what it says, 29. As for thee, O king, thy thoughts came into thy mind upon thy bed, what should come to pass hereafter. And he that revealeth secrets make known to thee what shall come to pass. But as for me, this secret is not revealed to me for any wisdom that I have more than any living. All right. See what Daniel's saying? He's saying, there ain't nothing special about me. I said, this has nothing to do with me. All right? But for their sakes, that shall make known the interpretation to the king, and that thou mayest know the thoughts of thy heart. So I'm going to let you know. All right. Now, here's what he says. O king, thou, O king, sawest and beheld a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. Okay, now this is the interpretation. This is not the dream. Now, anytime you study prophecy, when you start talking about the Antichrist or Lucifer, what does Lucifer mean? It means morning star, right? By reason of his brightness. All right. The Antichrist. Anytime you deal with the Antichrist, it's the first thing you get. It's the first thing you get is this clue about brightness. All right. I don't think it's a metaphorical thing. I think it's a very literal thing. When he appears, his brightness will outshine, it says, even the sun and the moon. All right, at least will appear to anyway, but all that's just a bunch of baloney. All right. So that's something you need to bear in mind, is that just because it burns bright and pretty doesn't make it a good thing necessarily. All right. Remember, way back in the day when we first started this, I said that was the thing God wanted all of his people to learn, was the difference between clean and unclean and between holy and profane. To understand the differences. Now, just because something is bright and pretty, like the morning star, doesn't make it something that's holy. It could be just as profane. You remember, Lucifer started out as the original cherub. He earned his spot.
They didn't call him the morning star for nothing.
For nothing. That's exactly right. Until he fell. And then when he fell, that age ended and this one begins now. All right, where we're now born of the flesh. Right. That's right. Now, but that's something I wanted to stop and bring out. That anytime that you are dealing with prophecy and talking about the appearance of the Antichrist, generally one of the first things mentioned is brightness. Just his appearance in general. All right? Verse 32. This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, and his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet were part iron and part clay. Now, I've heard a lot of things brought out about this image, and one of which is kind of interesting is this is all according to atomic weight. When you start talking about science, atomic weights are right on all the way down to the bottom. All right, that's just one of the many things about it. But the interpretation is what I think is even more important than that, though. All right, now let's have the setup. We have all this stuff. You got a head of gold, all the way down to feet that are part clay and part iron. All right, thou sawest till a stone. All right, this was in the original dream. Now they saw this image until thou sawest a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon the feet. All right, and the feet that were of iron and of clay, and break the image. Then was the iron and the clay and the brass and the silver and the gold broken to pieces together. It became like the chaff of the summer threshing floor, and the wind carried them away, that no place was found in them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Now, Prophecy Mountain is what, Roman? Do you remember? Nations, right? So we're talking about a Christian nation that would be developed out of it. All right? And consume the whole earth. Now, that begins to take effect in the millennium. All right? Now, it's this same stone we were talking about back with Jacob. Remember, it has a lot of significance. One is an actual stone. The other one is the spiritual side. All right? It's the stone that the church was built upon. All right? It's this same stone that in the interpretation for King of Babylon, all right, that strikes the feet of the image. And that's important, all right? Because listen to what it says about it. All right? This is a dream, and we will tell the interpretation before the king. All right? So that's the whole dream. O king, thou, O king, art the King of kings. Think about, when I read these words, think about Christ, all right? But this is saying this about the Antichrist. See, because it's saying about Nebuchadnezzar. But he also, remember, he represents the Antichrist in biblical ideology. Listen, thou, O king, art the King of kings. All right? For God of heaven hath given thee a kingdom and power and strength and glory. And wherefore the children, and wheresoever the children of men dwell, and the beasts of the field and the fowls of heaven, hath he given into thine hands, and hath made thee ruler over them all. Thou art this head of gold. All right, so he's telling Nebuchadnezzar, you're at the top, buddy, and you're going to stay there. All right? And after these shall rise another kingdom inferior to thee, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdue all things, as iron that breaketh all these shall it break in pieces and bruise. All right. Now, you can pick whoever world rulers you want to. It doesn't matter because they're dead anyway. They're already passed. There are historical figures up, so you get one wrong, who cares? All right. But most people want to run with like Alexander. We're talking about the Peloponnesian Wars. We're talking about some historical characters like that. After Nebuchadnezzar, you would have these 6 series of rulers. All right. That gets you all the way down to the last kingdom, though. The one that's half clay and half iron. All right. Verse 41. And whereas thou sawest the feet and the toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. All right, so let's stop right there. Clay. Genesis 1:1, clay gets you into man, all right? All right, iron. Book of Revelations 1:1 gets you into the fake breastplate, all right? So we got 2 symbols named there, clay and iron. Listen to what it says, because we're talking about the same stuff that was going on in the days of Noah. All right, and we're talking about the Nephilim and their return. And it's not me, just listen to what it says. All right? And their kingdom shall be divided. All right, so we're talking about those 10 kings in the book of Revelation, the ones that are half angelic and then half are the kings and queens of the ethnos. All right, so that's the group we're actually talking about. And whereas thou sawest the feet and the toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, something you can't mix, it doesn't work, it makes your steel brittle, and you can't use it for anything. The kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of strength of iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. And as for the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. All right, 43. Whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seeds of men. So that's what we're talking about again in the days of Noah, just like we talked about, spent all that time breaking down. All right? Right, so we're having that same influence again. That's why the iron and the clay won't quite get it together. Remember when we studied the Geber, most of the giants, they had deformities. They were 6 fingers, 6 toes, right. All right, they were still mighty warriors, but it wasn't quite gelling. They could have kids apparently sometime, but it didn't seem to be something that was really dominant. They never could get a real good strong hold. All right, why? Because that's exactly what we're talking about. And remember that stone comes in and smacks that kingdom just like in the book of Revelation. All right, same stone, same one back with Jacob's pillar to get you on the track way back with Genesis with the vision of this entire earth age set up with people ascending or descending and ascending back to heaven. Okay. Let's see. Let's just go one more verse. And in those days, these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom, just like he said he was going to do in the book of Revelation, which shall this is for the millennium, which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all the kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. And that's where you get into the third heaven and earth age then right there. I think that's probably enough. Everybody's brain should be numb by now. I do realize that's a lot stuck in one, but I had to hit all that at one time. And there needs to be a part 2 because that didn't even really scratch the surface of all of it. But anyway, you guys have a good night.